Good morning, Shabbat Shalom family. All glory and honor to our Father, the creator of all things, Father Yahweh, the one who is the God of the heavens and the creator of the firmament. The heavens declare his glory, and the firmament show us his handiwork. Glory and honor to Father Yahweh, and glory and honor to Messiah, the atonement for sin and intercessor of Israel, Messiah YHWH, the soon returning King of planet Earth. Glory and honor to Father Yahweh and to Messiah, whom Father has given the planet. Greetings to the 12 tribes of the awakening Hebrews, according to the Bible, who would be awakening in these last days, whose awakening signals the incoming Messianic kingdom and the end of Gentile rule. Greetings. Greetings to the 144,000, the ones chosen to be the forerunners of the Messianic kingdom, and the ones who will be sealed to establish the renewed covenant. Greetings. And to the precious souls among the Gentiles, who, through the eternal Spirit of the Father and the sacrifice of the Hebrew Messiah, are now partakers of the promises of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and also now in future inhabitants of the commonwealth of Israel. Greetings. Greetings to Akawamba and Yah, Only One Way, Yah Fee, Brother Gary Joseph, Brother Baldy Thorpe, David Harriet, Brother Mark from across the pond, both of those. Superstar, Stephen Kelly, Sister Love Blue. Greetings to all of you. We are continuing our study in the prophecy of the book of Revelation, which we know the prophecy is given to the servants of Yah. Now, as I was meditating on the word this morning, a couple of things came to my mind. And one of those things, Sister Wade, Shabbat Shalom, one of those things was really, when it comes down to it, in terms of the Day of Atonement and the Jubilee, and those who will be sealed for the Father, it really comes down to two classes of people. People that are seekers of truth and people that are not. It comes down to that. And the fruits of those who are seekers of truth will be that they end up seeking to glorify the Heavenly Father. That is the fruit of the seeker of truth at the end of the day. My wife and I were discussing it, and we were reviewing our own journeys to the truth. And all of us, brethren, have our own journey, right? All of us have our individual. There'll be nobody standing on the sea of glass that doesn't have a testimony of bearing witness of their journey. Now, of course, you won't remember all the evil, but you will know that you had a journey to get to the point where you're standing on the sea of glass. You'll understand that it was those marks that you see on the Messiah that caused you to get there. All of us will have that in common. And my wife was raised in the Catholic Church, and she, being raised in the Catholic Church, as she became young adult, she did not believe that the Catholic Church was serving the one who she called at that time God. She had been taught that, but she was uneasy that that was the case. And she began seeking what she needed to do to truly serve the one she called God. And she was eventually led into the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which at least that particular denomination claimed to read the King James Bible, and it opened her mind to things that she didn't know, such as the Sabbath was not on Sunday. Silly as that sounds to us now, but she thought it was because that's what she was taught. And that was the beginning of her journey to lead her to where she is now. I know myself, when I was staying with my grandmother and my Aunt Vin from Jamaica, and I was in Miami and I was 12 years old. Actually, I was 11 years old. I was first introduced to the Bible. I had been introduced to uh, memory verses when I was even smaller than that from my grandmother, who used to visit once in a while and take us to an SDA church. But that was when I was given a Bible and I was introduced to this book, the Bible. At the time, so many things were happening in my life as a young boy that I just wanted some sort of security and safety. And I got the sense in the spirit that the one I called God and this book can help me get those things. And I started really, the first memorization of verses from me looking at the Bible happened when I was 11 years old. And I was convicted even at that time that this King James Bible was the word of the one I called God. And then later, when I was 21, I felt a strong call to come to him and to serve him. And the only church that I knew was the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And what caused me to go there was because of my grandmother and my Aunt Vin. And I noticed all the churches that kept Sunday ate pork, and I knew that the Bible didn't teach you to eat pork, and I knew what day the seventh day was. And that started my journey in seeking truth. Over time, probably after I turned 40, I started coming to the realization that the Seventh-day Adventist Church was not following the Bible all the way in truth. And that there was some contradictions between what the Bible was telling me and what Ellen White was telling me, which was her works of writings are heavily influential in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And then I started getting problems from leadership in the SDA church because of some of the stands I took that they could not contradict from the Bible, but went against the church and its doctrines. And I started to understand I can't be an SDA if I want to follow the Bible. So I made the announcement to my family, I'm no longer an SDA. I was still a Christian, that I was no longer an SDA. And year after year, as I mentioned, I kept reading through my Bible. And now I was starting to be convinced that there is no Christianity religion in the Bible. That combined with the conviction I had from reading the Bible, that the former descendants of slaves were really the Israelite people. And I kept reading it because I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I couldn't believe my own conviction at the time. And I mentioned it to some of my friends. I mentioned it to my wife, of course, and I mentioned it to Sister Daniels, and they thought I was crazy. But I kept studying and praying and reading. And then it came to me like this. When you get to the kingdom, okay, if you are fortunate enough to be blessed to be in Yah's kingdom, the kingdom of the Messiah, the city has 12 gates with the names of 12 tribes on it. There is going to be no subgroup of Christianity in the kingdom. There's going to be no subgroup of Muslims in the kingdom. There's going to be no subgroup of Judaism in the kingdom, or Buddhist, or any other religion. There'll be no subgroup of people worshiping that. There's only going to be one God. And everyone on the planet will be worshiping that one God. And that, according to the Bible, is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's it. And the entire kingdom will be messiahs of the line of the tribe of Judah. So there's no subgroups. There won't be a group of Baptists worshiping on Sunday in the kingdom. They won't be there. They won't exist. Only those who are followers of the God of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, will be there. There'll be no divisions of religion in the kingdom. So now I'm starting to understand, wait a minute. So where all these churches come from, which led me on a path of study to understand where they came from and how they came from Rome. All of them claim to come all the way. Even Rome claims that it started with what they call Jesus Christ and then Peter being the first chosen pope. And then Christians will tell you that all of those people in Acts were Christians. No, they weren't. As I read it, the word Christians refer to people being called Christians, not calling themselves. You will never see no person in the Bible called themselves a Christian. When Agrippa said to Paul, "You almost persuade me to be a Christian," Paul said, "I wish that everyone under me was altogether as such as I am, except these bonds." He didn't say, yeah, you need to be a Christian. And in fact, when he wrote to the Corinthians, he said, if any man being called a brother is fornicating, don't fellowship with him. He didn't say any man being called a Christian. And Peter had to really tell the Hebrews in his letter, don't be ashamed when they call you a Christian. Why did he have to bring that up? Don't be ashamed. Why? Because it was a shameful thing to be called by a Gentile a Christian. And that's where the calls were coming from the Gentiles. And there were many other verses I started seeing that as a Christian, I found out they were being misapplied, taken out of context, and changed. And then I started becoming much more sure in my conviction that my family, that we came from slave here in Florida and from Maroons in Jamaica, we were Hebrews. We were Hebrews. And I understood later that conviction was me seeking the truth to follow the Father. Everybody is seeking something, but not everybody is seeking out for the truth. And the fruit that will bear witness that you're seeking the truth is when you come through your journey, you will end up at the throne of the Father. You will end up there. And you will end up there having been introduced to your Father by Mashiach YHWH. Or some people call him Yahushua or Yeshua or whatever you are convicted that his name that's other than Jesus Christ. You will end up there. And when we read last night, about the numberless multitude before the throne, that's where all people seekers of truth will end up. All the seekers of truth will end up there. People who are not seekers of truth will not be there. Let's look at Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14. Talking about the return of the Messiah. Zechariah 14 is actually a prophecy of the establishment of the Messianic kingdom and the first resurrection and a prophecy of the Messiah. Okay, so when you're looking at Zechariah 14, that's what you're seeing. So here, I'm going to start at verse 5 and read from verse 5. I'm going to read from verse 5 down to verse 16. Okay, this is Zechariah chapter 14. And read this whole chapter when you get a chance. For the sake of time, we're going to read just some select verses, but read the whole chapter. And in fact, read the whole book of Zechariah. You won't understand all of it right away, but it's okay. As you pray to your Heavenly Father and you keep reading his book, and your goal and your seeking is the glorification of the Creator, you will get more understanding. Praise the Most High, because he will give it to you. This is Zechariah chapter 14, beginning at verse 5, and reading from verse 5 to verse 16. And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azal. Yea, ye shall flee, like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And Yahweh, my Most High, shall come, and all the saints with thee. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known to Yahweh, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And that matches what we're going to eventually read in Revelation 21. And it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter shall it be. That's also in Revelation, and that's also in Ezekiel chapter 47 and 46. And Yahweh shall be king over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Yahweh, and his name one. See, there's not going to be any subdivisions of religions or names. Everybody will know him. Everybody will know his name. There'll be no other worship to be worshiped except him. All the land shall be turned as a plain from Geba to Rimmon, south of Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place. From Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate, unto the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananiel unto the king's wine presses. And men shall dwell in it, and there shall be no more utter destruction, but Jerusalem shall be safely inhabited. And this shall be the plague wherewith Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. This is also in the prophecy of Obadiah, same thing. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from Yahweh shall be among them. And they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his brother. And Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. And it shall be, and so shall be the plague of the horses, of the mule, of the camel, and of the ass, and of all the beasts that shall be in these tents as this plague. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles every year. All those redeemed shall keep the Feast of Tabernacles, which is why we saw it in Revelation chapter 7, Revelation chapter 14 as well, and Revelation chapter 15, the Feast of Tabernacles. Praise the Most High. 7 years and 9 months from now. 7 years and 9 months from now. Okay. So really what it comes down to is those souls on the planet today that are seeking truth. And if they're seeking truth, they will end up with the Father. If they're not, they won't. I know it sounds simple, doesn't it? But look, as we've been studying the Bible and as you've been reading the Bible for yourself, you will find it. It's always simple. It's never complicated. Only when man wants to do his will do things become complicated. That's it. When we're following the Father and his word, difficult decisions might be having to be made, but they're not complicated decisions. They're simple decisions, but they're difficult, right? So you can have a very simple decision and it can be very difficult to make that decision because of the consequences of that decision, right? So it won't be complicated though. But with man, everything's complicated. Everything. because we live in the system of Babylon, which means confusion. With man, everything is complicated. With the Father, nothing is complicated. Praise the Most High. So today, we're going to be starting our journey into the trumpets. Now, as we said, we saw 7 churches, which represent the 7 time periods of Yah's chosen ones. Then we saw 7 seals on a book, which is the book of life, which is the book that represents the inhabitants of the Father given Messiah, the Messiah's kingdom that the Father gave him. Father gives him the book, which have the names of all the inhabitants of that kingdom written in it. So we see the 7 seals, and we saw the 7 churches, and we saw how the seals and the churches harmonize together. Well, now, today we're going to look at 7 trumpets. And while they do harmonize with the churches and seals, there's something a little different about the trumpets. First, let's look at the word, of course, and let's get some witnesses to the trumpets. First, the first time we start to see really the explanation of the trumpets is in the book of Numbers. Now, you hear a trumpet on Mount Sinai when Father goes to meet with Israel. You hear a trumpet on Mount Sinai. But there's an explanation of trumpets in Numbers chapter 10. Numbers chapter 10. There's an explanation of the trumpets. So let's take a look at this. In Numbers chapter 10, we're going to begin at verse 1 and go down to verse 10. And we're going to look at here the trumpets. Numbers chapter 10 from verse 1 to verse 10. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Make thee 2 trumpets of silver. Of a one piece shalt thou make them. That thou mayest use them for the calling of the assembly and for the journeying of the camps. So the calling of the assembly and the journeying of the camps, you have these trumpets. And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble together to thee at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Let's stop here. Let me ask you a question. What was the tabernacle of the congregation? Let me ask you. When he said they're going to assemble, which was why today, and I'm going to ask you a second question, like what is an assembly according to the Bible? But where and what is the door of the tabernacle of the congregation? What is that? It's called the tabernacle of the congregation. Well, you're kind of right. Brother Castle King said mercy seat, but the problem is, of course, they couldn't go to the mercy seat, right? Because that's in the most holy place. They couldn't actually go to the ark, but they could go to the door of the sanctuary. Does that make sense, y'all? So they met at the door of the sanctuary. That is the tabernacle, right? The tent where the sanctuary was. Moses could go in there, right? But not all of them could go in there. They met at the door of the tabernacle. That is the door of the sanctuary. At the front door, where inside there you would see an altar of sacrifice, and inside that you would see, the first apartment that we know and the second apartment. So they would meet at the door of that tent where all of those things were. Okay, and the trumpet, blowing the trumpet, would tell them to meet there. Now, second question. So I'm not saying Castle King is wrong. He's not. But just to be, I guess I'm nitpicking to be more specific there. They didn't go inside, the actual apartment. It's a million people, but they met at the front door of where all that stuff began. Now, what's another, when he says assemble themselves at the door, what is another word for the assembly of the people? Give me a couple of terms. What is another term for the assembly of the people? That's right. That's what's called a church. A church. That's right. And the congregation is the tabernacle of the church. Now, was all the people of the earth called to meet at the church? Were all the people of the earth called to meet at the church? Or just certain people? Who was called? Well, first of all, it was only Israel, right? Only Israel was called. Only Israel is the church. Only Israel is the congregation. Now, the logical question that I know is on the mind of many Gentiles that might be listening here, not on Brother Mark's mind, because he knows, but on many Gentiles, well, what about the Gentiles? The Gentiles who trust in the Hebrew Messiah receive the promises of being heirs of the kingdom. The Gentiles who trust in the Hebrew Messiah of Israel are also heirs of the promises of the kingdom. They are not bloodline, but they become part of what Ephesians calls the commonwealth of Israel. Now, let's talk about that. So you're going to have in the kingdom, the whole earth is going to be Yahweh's and given to Yahushua. The whole earth is the commonwealth of Israel. The capital is going to be at Jerusalem in a specific land given to Israel, but the whole earth is part of the commonwealth because the whole earth belongs to the line of the tribe of Judah. Does that make sense, brethren? So now any inhabitant of the new earth at that time, the restored earth, the earth and the regeneration, the restitution of all things is going to be part of the commonwealth of Israel. It's like there's 50 states in the United States. Whatever state you're a citizen of, you're a citizen of the United States. Does that make sense, y'all? Okay, whatever state you're a citizen of all the 50, being a citizen of that state means you're also a citizen of the nation of the United States. Well then, the whole earth belongs to Yahweh. The whole earth will be the commonwealth of Israel. The whole earth will have different nations in different places, but they're all part of the commonwealth of Israel, so that the Gentiles are part of the commonwealth. Even if they're not of the bloodline, they receive the promise of eternal salvation. They receive all the promises of inherited land and everything, though they're not the bloodline. So the church is always 100% of the time in the Bible, Israel. Either the bloodline itself or those that inherit the commonwealth. Does that make sense, y'all? Everybody got that? So it's not complicated, is it? People make it complicated, but it's not complicated. So you can see there. So the whole door of the tabernacle of the congregation is all for Israel and the strangers that are among them. Praise the Most High. Now, let's keep reading. Numbers chapter 10. And if they blow but one trumpet, then the princes, which are the heads of thousands of Israel, shall gather themselves unto thee. When ye blow an alarm, then the camps that lie on the east part shall go forward. When ye blow an alarm the second time, then the camps that lie on the south side shall take their journey. And when ye blow an alarm for their journeys. But when the congregation is to be gathered together, ye shall blow, but ye shall not sound an alarm. The sons of Aaron, the priests, shall blow with the trumpets. They shall be to you for an ordinance forever throughout your generations. And if ye go to war in your land against an enemy that oppresseth you, then ye shall blow an alarm with the trumpets, and ye shall be remembered before Yahweh your Most High, and ye shall be saved from your enemies. Also, in the day of your gladness, in your solemn feast, in the beginnings of your months, ye shall blow with the trumpets for your burnt offerings, and over the sacrifices of your peace offerings, they shall may be unto you for a memorial before your Most High. I am Yahweh. your Most High. So there's trumpet sounds to gather Israel, and there's trumpet sounds for war, to warn Israel that a danger is coming. Does that make sense, y'all? So when the trumpet sounds are gathered to gather Israel together, they are meeting at the tabernacle of the congregation. Either it's leaders or the whole congregation, right? They're meeting at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. When there's war, the tribes begin to organize and move. Okay? When there's war. Now, let's look at a couple of examples in the Bible. Let's look at a couple of examples. Ezekiel chapter 33. Ezekiel chapter 33 comes to my mind first. Ezekiel chapter 33. Ezekiel 33. Yes. This is the watchman warning. Okay. Ezekiel 33. I'm going to begin at verse 1, and I'm going to go down to verse 7. This is Ezekiel 33, 1 through 7. Again, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, speak to the children of thy people, and say unto them, when I bring the sword upon a land, if the people of the land take a man of their coast and set him for their watchman, if when he seeth the sword come upon the land, he blow the trumpet and warn the people, then whosoever heareth the sound of the trumpet and taketh not warning, if the sword come and take him away, his blood shall be upon his own head. He heard the sound of the trumpet and took not warning, his blood shall be upon him. But he that taketh warning shall deliver his soul. But if the watchman see the sword come and blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if the sword come and take any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at the watchman's hand. So thou, O son of man, have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at my mouth and warn them from me. 2 more verses. Let's read verse 8 and 9. When I say to the wicked, O wicked man, thou shalt surely die, if thou dost not speak to warn the wicked from his way, that the wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thy hand. Nevertheless, if thou warn the wicked of his way to turn from it, if he do not turn from his way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul. This is why Paul has said in some of his writings, I am clean from the blood of all men. In Acts, in fact, was chapter 21. He said, I am clear from the blood of all men. This is what he was referring to, because he said, I have not shunned to declare unto you all the counsel of Yahweh. So that Israel, and especially you're looking at Ezekiel, a Levite priest, and he was made a watchman, so that he's giving warning. And if he gives the warning and the people don't heed the warning, that's on them. He's giving the warning because if he gives the warning, he's safe. If he doesn't give the warning, they will be destroyed and him, because he saw it coming and he didn't give the warning. Okay, let's look at another example. Joel, prophecy of Joel. Chapter 2. Notice what it says. It starts off chapter 2. This is Joel chapter 2, beginning at verse 1. And I'm going to read from verse 1. And I'm going to go from verse 1 down to verse 3. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh cometh. It is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and the strong, there shall not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. So he's saying, blow the alarm in Zion and tell the people this is coming. Okay? Blow the alarm in Zion and tell the people of Zion this is coming. Joel, tell them this is coming. Okay? One more. Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah chapter 58. Yes, verse 1. Isaiah chapter 58 and verse 1. The Most High tells his prophet Isaiah, cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins. So you see, the trumpet is a trumpet of warning, of danger that's coming. So we're looking at today trumpets. So now you have the 7 churches, which are the 7 time periods of Yah's chosen ones, followed by 7 seals, which are the chosen ones of those time periods that are going to be in the kingdom. Then you have the trumpets, which are the warnings to those time periods of what's coming. So far, so good. Everybody got that so far? So you had the 7 churches, which are the time periods of the chosen. You have the seals, which are the saved, redeemed souls from the same time period. And now you're going to have trumpets, which are the warnings of destruction for the same time periods. Okay. So now that's what that gives us an understanding. And of course, what we'll do now, we're going to go through the trumpets and we're going to compare. We're going to match each trumpet with each seal and each church. And you'll get a complete picture of what's going on in these time periods. And of course, we already know we're in the 6th trumpet, which goes with the 6th seal, which go with the 6th church. We also now understand the return of the Messiah is the 6th seal. We also understand the 144,000 is the 6th church and the 6th seal, which we know that's going to now be in the 6th trumpet. Okay, so you got all of that. And then, of course, there's the 7s, and we'll go through that as well. So, yes, and we started that last night, actually, when we looked at Revelation chapter 15, and we looked at Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. There was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. That started the 7th, okay? And we see the Laodiceans in the 7th church, okay, being spit out, having been warned from the 6 people of the 6th, okay? Praise the Most High. So you'll start to see a more clearer picture. So you're starting to understand now, as you all are going through this, and many of you have been through this study several years now, as we've been doing these studies since I think I started the first one in 2004. But each year I'm learning more as I continue to pray to my Heavenly Father and read his word. And so each year, that's why we keep doing the book of Revelation. Things change. There's more light given to us, and we share that. Praise the Most High. So like 10 years ago, I could not tell you 10 years ago that 7 years and 9 months from now, it's over. But I can tell you that now. See, I can tell you that now. Praise the Most High. Now, let's now go to the book of Revelation and start to look at trumpets. And not only that, it's going to, as we have come to the conclusion that these trumpets are warnings, right? They're warnings of danger. Okay. We're going to see that the book of Revelation actually gives us some additional information about that. Let's look at this. We're in Revelation chapter 8. Now, the first verse of Revelation chapter 8 really should have been part of chapter 7, right? Because that's the 7th seal. So really, the trumpets begin in verse 2. So we already read Revelation chapter 8, verse 1, and that goes with the seals. So now we're going to look at the trumpets. So Revelation chapter 8, verse 2 begins the trumpets. And I'm going to begin at verse 2 and read down to verse 6. This is Revelation chapter 8, and it's going to give us some background into these trumpets. Revelation chapter 8, beginning at verse 2 and going down to verse 6. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before Yahweh, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. Before I continue, there are 2 altars in the tabernacle of the congregation. There's an altar of sacrifice, and there's an altar of incense. Which altar is being mentioned here? In verse 2, it says, another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. Which altar? Is it the altar? That's right. It's obviously the altar of incense, as Stephen Kelly said. And why? Because you have a censer. Censer is used to carry incense. Okay, does that make sense? Whereas the 5th seal talked about souls under the altar. That's not the altar of incense. Those souls were at the altar of sacrifice, okay? Because they were souls that were martyred, sacrificed, okay? So this altar is incense. Now, we understand now the altar of incense is in the first apartment. You go past, you come into the court, you see the altar of sacrifice, you walk in. If you're a priest, you walk into the first apartment. You see on your left 7 candlesticks. You see on your right a table of showbread, and before you is a door, and next to that door is incense, an altar of incense. Okay, so here we are, Revelation chapter 8, verse 3. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. So the altar of incense represents the prayer of the saints, which goes into the most holy place, where the Father, between the 2 angels of the mercy seat, received the prayers. So the prayers of the saints are heard in that incense. And if you recall, the 24 elders each had incense, right? That they should offer it with the prayers of the saints. This is in Revelation chapter. Let's see. Revelation chapter 5. Yes, Revelation chapter 5. Notice what it said, Revelation chapter 5. And before that, it's Revelation chapter 4. Yep, Revelation chapter 4. But the 24 elders are mentioned. But let me go to Revelation chapter 5, because I think it's clearer there. Revelation chapter 5, I'm going to read verse 7 and 8. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. So each one had harps and vials full of odors, or censers, which are the prayers of the saints. Now here we are in the chapter 8, and we see a very similar thing here. We begin at verse 4. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before the Most High out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. So there was an altar, there was incense, there was an angel. But at some point, the prayers of the saints was in that incense, and it was cast into the earth. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? So they took the altar, they took the incense off the altar, and instead of going into the most holy place, the angel threw it to the earth. That's right. These prayers are being rejected. So let's go through this now. So that's telling us that in the 7 trumpets, there is an illustration of those who are being rejected. Everybody got that so far? There is an illustration of those who are being rejected. That's how this is beginning. Okay, so you're starting off with your trumpets, and it's showing you, okay, we went through the 7 churches, we went through the 7 seals. Now let me show you the 7 trumpets where people are being rejected. Their prayers are not being heard, which tells you something. I know it's a difficult thought for many people because, Jesus just loves everybody and he's going to save everybody. Just raise your hand and trust in Jesus and he's going to just save everybody. This flies in the face of that. Because we also know what the Bible says. The Messiah himself said, many shall be in that day shall say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name and done works in thy name? And he will say what? I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. So there are people of religious persuasion whose prayers are not being heard. Okay. There you go. How do we know our prayers are being heard? First of all, the first thing that commends us to the Father is repentance. As a result of our repentance and coming toward the Father, he covers us with his righteousness. His righteousness causes us to be declared innocent through the blood of the Messiah, and we seek good works so that the fruit of the perfection of righteousness and the forgiveness of sin is us to do the Father's will. So if you have a conviction in your heart to do the Father's will and you are seeking truth, guess who you are? Your prayers are being heard. If you have no conviction to repent of anything, and it is not your object, and the Father knows all hearts, I don't. It is not in your heart to give him all the glory. You ain't with him. And he ain't hearing you. Which means, if you're seeking to glorify man, you cannot seek to glorify man and glorify the Father at the same time. You can't do it. It's impossible. Because the glorification of man is a doctrine of the enemy. The glorification of the Father is him. So you cannot seek to glorify man and think you're going to be hearing prayers are being heard to the Father. That's right. You can't serve 2 masters. You cannot glorify man and glorify the Father. Okay, you can't. Impossible. Praise the Most High. Okay, so we now know that these prayers, these trumpets are for people whose prayers are not being heard. And now we'll see why when each trumpet is opened up. So look, let's go to the first one. This is Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. So the first trumpet blows, and there was, it says, hail and fire mingled with blood. Now, we have seen this before, right? Many times, matter of fact. So let's go through some scriptures and look at them. Hail and fire mingled with blood. Let's take a look at that. The first thing that came to my mind when I saw that was Psalms 18. Psalms 18, the 18th division of Psalms. That's the first thing came to my mind. And I was like, y'all know me. I was looking and said, where is this, man? And I found it. And I had already marked it, but I had taken a few minutes to find it. But I did find it. So now, Psalms 18, Psalms 18. I'm going to begin. Let's see. I'm going to begin in Psalms 18. I'm going to start at verse 6. And I'm going to read down from verse 6 down to verse 17. Look for the fire and hail, right? This is Psalms 18 from verse 6 to verse 17. Psalm of David. In my distress, I called upon Yahweh and cried unto my Most High. He heard my voice out of his temple, and my cry came before him, even into his ears. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth. Why was he wroth? Because David was in trouble. And he called upon the Father. And the Father was responding to those who caused David trouble. The Father was wroth. Verse 8. There went up a smoke out of his nostrils, and fire out of his mouth, and devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also, and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And he rode upon the cherub, and did fly. He did fly upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters and thick clouds of the skies. At the brightness that was before him, his thick clouds passed. Hailstones and coals of fire. Yahweh also thundered in the heavens, and the highest gave his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. He sent out his arrow and scattered them. He shot out lightnings and discomfited them. Then the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were discovered at thy rebuke, O Yahweh, at the blast of the breath of thy nostrils. He sent from above. He took me, drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy, from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. Praise the Most High. So hailstones and coals of fire were the voice of the Father in his response of delivering David. Praise the Most High. And it was to the enemies of David this came. All right. Exodus, I believe, is chapter 10. I always want to look at chapter 9, but it's actually chapter 10. Exodus chapter 10, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make sure. No, it is chapter 9. It's Exodus chapter 9, beginning at verse 18. This is Leviticus chapter 9. I'm going to start at verse 17. Leviticus chapter 9 from verse 17. And I'm going to read down to verse 23. Leviticus chapter 9 from verse 17 down to verse 23. Actually, I'm going to read down to verse 26. Sorry, 17 to 26. As yet exaltest thou thyself against my people, that thou wilt not let them go? Behold, tomorrow, about this time, I will cause it to rain a very grievous hail, such as hath not been in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Send therefore now and gather thy cattle and all thou hast in the field, for upon every man and beast shall be found in the field shall not be brought home. The hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. He that feared the word of Yahweh among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his cattle flee into the houses. And he that regardeth not the word of Yahweh left his servants and his cattle in the field. And Yahweh said unto Moses, stretch forth thine hand toward heaven, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb in the field, throughout all the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord Yahweh sent thunder and hail, and fire ran upon the ground. And Yahweh rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And the hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt. all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb of the field, and break every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was no hail. So the voice of the Father comes in thunder and hailstones and coals of fire and blood. And it does not affect Israel because it's to deliver Israel. David cried unto him, and here Moses is told on behalf of the children of Israel to do the same thing. Ezekiel chapter 38. Okay, Mark, let's look at Ezekiel 38. Let's look at Ezekiel 38. Yes, I know it's there, but let's look at it. Ezekiel chapter 38. Brother Mark is saying, which we know is the second resurrection. Ezekiel chapter 38. Let me see. Where is it here? Ezekiel 38:22. Yes. All right. Ezekiel 38:22. All right. Ezekiel 38:20. I'm going to start at 21. I'm going to read from 21 down to 23. Ezekiel 38, I'm going to read from 21 to get the context down to 23. Notice what it says here. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Most High Yahweh. Every man's sword shall be against his brother, and I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood. And I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him in overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. So we have three witnesses, right? What did we get? Moses, David, Ezekiel. All right, so you got at least three witnesses here. Moses, and of course, there's Revelation itself. So let's compare this with the churches, the first church and the first seal. Let's take a look. Revelation chapter 2, the first church, Ephesus. Revelation chapter 2. So you see hailstones, coals of fire burning up. You're talking about people who have not going to have their prayers heard. Okay, who is that? Well, it's not Ephesus. Let's look. Revelation chapter 2, beginning at verse 1 down to verse 7. Unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, these things saith he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of 7 golden candlesticks. I know thy works, and thy labor and patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil. Ooh, so those which are evil, again, against Ephesus, they ain't being heard. Wait a minute. And thou hast tried them which say they are apostles and are not, and hast found them liars. Ooh, false religionists in Ephesus are not being heard. Let me ask a question. So if false religions and people that are faking it, people that are trying to subvert the truth, are not being heard in Ephesus, do you think they're being heard now? Do you think the people that are against the truth, that are stubbornly fighting against the truth of the Father and against his people, do you think their prayers are being heard? No, they're not. MAGA, alphabet soup, huh? You think their prayers are being heard? MAGA, alphabet soup, and all those of like ilk. See that? Let's keep going. And has borne and has patience, and for my name's sake has labored and has not fainted. Nevertheless, I got somewhat against you, and we know about that, the first love. But verse 6, this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of Yahweh. So there are people from the first century. Of course, it makes sense. Let's go to the first seal. Let's look at the first seal. This is Revelation chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. Revelation chapter 6, verse 1 and 2. And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, I heard, as it were, the voice of thunder. And one of the four beasts say, come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse. And he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him. And he went forth conquering and to conquer. So we knew this is the opening of the early reign of the first century, going forth with the message from the Father to conquering and to conquer all falsehood, all man-made religion, to glorify the Father in Messiah. Anybody against that glorification, anybody faking it, was not going to be heard. Does that make sense? Which is why you saw hailstones and coals of fire. That's the response of those that fight against Ephesus as liars, those that fight against the white horse. Everybody got that so far? So there's your first trumpet. Isn't that something? There's your first trumpet right there. So that's against those that are against the true gospel, which we talk about a lot, right? The gospel of the Messiah, which is power of Yah unto salvation, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. For therein is the righteousness of the Father revealed. So everybody that's against the righteousness of the Father, everybody that's against what we read in Luke, also the gospel we read in the Gospel of Luke, the description of it in the Gospel of Luke. Let's take a look. Gospel of Luke. Going to read this. Let's start chapter 1 and read chapter 1 from verse 30. This is the testimony of the angel Gabriel about the gospel to Mary. This is Luke chapter 1 from verse 30 down to verse 33. Here's the gospel again. And the angel said unto her, fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with Yahweh. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb and shalt bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name. Again, it's not Jesus. There was no J at that time. His name is YHWH or Yahushua or Yeshaya, depending on what you want to say by your conviction. He shall be great and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Most High Yahweh shall give him the throne of his father David, and he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever. And of his kingdom there shall be no end. That's the gospel, y'all. He shall reign over the house of Jacob forever. And of his kingdom there shall be no end. And he shall give him the throne of David. This is the gospel. This is the message of the kingdom. Is that not the message of the kingdom? Right? Did I make a mistake there? Or is that the message of the kingdom? That Gabriel firsthand testified to Miriam, otherwise known as Mary. There it is. Okay, there it is. Praise the Most High. Wait a minute. There was another one. Oh, yes. Our brother, who is the brother? Zechariah, the father of John the Baptist. He speaks in chapter 1. Also, Luke chapter 1, he gives the kingdom message of the gospel. Luke chapter 1. I'm going to start at verse 68. Luke chapter 1. First, let me start at verse 67. Luke chapter 1, verse 67. And let's go down to, let's see, from verse 67. Oh man, I'm going to go from verse 67 down to verse 75. This is Gospel of Luke chapter 1 from verse 67 to verse 75. And his father Zacharias was filled with the Holy Ghost and prophesied. See, you got to have the Father's Spirit to be able to understand these things. And prophesied saying, Blessed be the Most High Yahweh of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people. He hath raised up an horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. That's why you got hailstones, coals of fire. To perform the mercy promised to the fathers, to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he sware to our father Abraham, that he would grant unto us, that we, being delivered out of the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all the days of our life. There you go. There you go. There it is again, the gospel of the kingdom. There it is. And that the enemies of that, our prayers are not being heard. So if you're of the ilk of the Amalekites, your prayers ain't being heard. If you're of the ilk of man-made, Abrahamic religion, your prayers not being heard. And if your prayers are being heard, you'll end up where we are, at the throne of the Father. Does that make sense, y'all? Y'all catching that? If your prayers are heard, you'll end up in one place, at the throne of the Father, because that's where all of us are going to be. That's where the tabernacle of the congregation is. At the throne of the Father. Nope, ain't nobody hearing them prayers. See, this is the hard truth. When people see tragedy on planet Earth and they say, where was God? He ain't hearing y'all. Why would he hear y'all? Y'all in rebellion against him. Why would he hear y'all? Y'all worshiping a white Jesus. Why would he hear you? Why? Because you raised your hand and received white Jesus as your savior? Apparently not. Apparently not. If you are hearing truth, you're going to end up with the Father. You're going to end up receiving truth. That's right. Thank you, Yakoba. That's right. You don't hear nobody that's an unrepentant sinner. He do not hear you. You must be a repentant sinner to be heard. Blessed are they whose sins are forgiven, and iniquities are forgiven, and sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom Yahweh will not impute sin, because I acknowledge my transgressions and my sins I confess. That is Psalm 32. That's right. Got to be a seeker of truth. So in the first trumpet, we see that the enemies of Yah are those that are not seekers of truth, that are actually seeking to subvert truth, that are clinging to man and the glorification of man. Whereas Yah's people are calling on him. They're being heard. But there are those that are not, and they're not being heard. Praise the Most High. One more. We're going to do one more trumpet today, and then we'll catch up later when we do the other part. Well, actually, this is just the first session, isn't it? We got a second session. Let me stop here. This is the first session. We still got a second session, so I forgot about that. So we got another session. So we're going to start the second session with the second angel. Praise the Most High. Okay, so it's now 11:24 a.m. Eastern Time, hour and a half or so. Give me time to rest a little bit, and we'll come back and look at some other trumpets. Praise the Most High. May the Most High bless you and keep you, and may he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you, and may the Most High Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom.